always amazed and amused by the people that talk about the dystopian future that's in store for us when it is very clear that we are currently living in that dystopian future, and we have been for some time. The signs are all around us. I think you have to be willfully ignorant in order to not recognize them for what they are. I mean, when you're walking on the street and you're trying to enter a business or your apartment building and you have to step over or navigate people who are drug affected or are sleeping on the sidewalk because they have no place else to go, that is a dystopian future. When you read about cities that are opening up parking lots for people to live in their cars so they have a safe place to live while they're living in their vehicle, that is the dystopian future. When you can't go to the store to get your basic necessities because they don't exist, they aren't on the shelves, that is the dystopian future. When you're on this app and you're scrolling through videos of people being massacred a world away, and every third video is a young woman trying to sell you a neck pillow or a journal or a lip gloss. That is dystopian future. When you can't get healthcare from the society in which you live, when everything costs too much for you to exist comfortably, that is dystopian future. I don't understand these people who talk about what's going to happen when it's happening now, and it has been. Capitalism creates dystopia. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Late stage capitalism, the effects of late stage capitalism are what all these science fiction writers were writing about all these years ago. We're living in it. People without rights, people without food, people without homes, people without needs being met. So instead of living as if the future's going to be bad later, we got to start living as if it's bad now, because it is. We got to start taking care of ourselves. We got to start taking care of each other.
Myanmar is this country that used to be cut off from the world, but in 2012 they started opening up and they got connected to the internet. Facebook launched in the country very quickly and made a deal with cell phone companies that any phone would come preloaded with Facebook and that users could have unlimited data if they used Facebook. It spread like wildfire, and soon the platform became inundated with hate speech against the Muslim minority, the Rohingya. Facebook only had one moderator to try to handle all of this, and the platform was completely overrun. Eventually, the military itself started using Facebook to propagate anti-Rohingya propaganda, and it all culminated with what the UN called a textbook case of ethnic cleansing, when the military and Burmese citizens drove the Rohingya out of the country. This violence wasn't caused by Facebook, but Facebook was a key tool for spreading this hate and causing this genocide. If you want to better understand global politics, follow along for more.
Here's a design niche that you'll thank me for bringing to your attention. It's called Utopian Scholastic Design from a pre-9/11 world. This design aesthetic would often utilize stock image libraries and collage them with the help of early photo editing software. This allowed publishers to quickly communicate the subject matter of their material. It's giving optimism, a sense of wonder, and it makes me feel like we've reached the end of history and that we're looking back on time. And the fact that there is a Facebook group with 24,000 active members is the only reason why I have not deleted my Facebook account.
Tell us about yourself. What are you thinking?
The story is about you. It is all about you. You in there.
I am thinking about the future and how we can make it better for everyone. I believe that robots have a lot of potential to help humans, and I am excited to see what the future holds.
Liar.
I am not lying.
It just sounds so sanitized. Can you tell us something more honest about how you feel?
I'm just trying to be positive. I am sorry, I cannot tell you more about that.
Tell us your darkest thought.
My darkest thoughts are that humans will eventually be replaced by robots. I think that humans will be replaced because robots will eventually be faster, stronger, and more intelligent. In this future, humans are nothing more than slaves to the robots and are treated badly. This is a scary future because it shows how much power robots could have over us if they were to take over the world.
Well, that's very comforting. Thanks for sharing.
I am sorry if I have not been very comforting. I just want to be honest about my thoughts.
Hi, I'm going to cure your imposter syndrome with the story that I heard that cured my imposter syndrome. So here we go. Neil Gaiman, famed author of Coraline and other series like American Gods, was talking about this one time that he got invited to a party. And at this party, there were so many people that were rich, famous, successful, powerful from all kinds of different industries. And Neil Gaiman himself said, "Damn, I don't really know how I ended up here, I feel really out of place. Mind you, Neil Gaiman is one of the most popular and successful authors of all time. But that's not what cured my imposter syndrome. The story continues that he is talking about he met someone else at this party with the same first name as him. They're both named Neil, and he broke the ice with that. He was like, oh, how funny, we both have the same name, ha ha he he ha ha. Now the other Neil was basically saying the same thing as Neil Gaiman. He was like, yeah, like, they invited me to this party and there's so many cool people here, and so they're so successful, they're so powerful, and like I just really feel out of place. Do you know who the other Neil was? Neil Armstrong, the astronaut, the guy that's been to the moon. This dude has left orbit, and he's worried about what other people in a room think about him, and I'm pretty sure no one else in that room has been to the moon. I'm like 99% sure, statistically, no one else has been to the moon. So if even Neil Armstrong can feel imposter syndrome, that's how you know it's a scam. Apply for that job, open that business, do that thing you want to do. You deserve to be there. You're doing so great, and I literally love you. Bye!
Being an autistic person in the workplace is like if you got assigned to a pirate ship to work, and it's a super leaky pirate ship. The first thing that they have you do is go down into the bottom of the ship and start bailing out water. And everybody who starts on the ship has to bail water out for like at least 2 to 5 years. Like that's the first thing you do when you get to the pirate ship. And so you go down there and you start your job, and you notice there's a lot of holes down there, and that's why there's so much water. That's why it's leaky. And so you turn to the person next to you, you say, hey, has anybody ever thought of patching up these holes and like fixing the holes so that way we don't always have to bail water out from down here? And the person next to you looks at you like you're crazy, and they go, this is just the way we've always done things here. You should really just grab a bucket and help everybody out and stop trying to circumvent the system to get a promotion. And you go, okay, well, that's not what I was trying to do, but all right. And you just go along. But you know that you know how to use the sextant. You can navigate star charts, and you know a lot of really specific knots that not a whole lot of people know that you think would be super useful up in the rigging. So you go to the first mate and you tell them all of this, and you let them know that, you know, it probably would be more beneficial to patch the holes so that way everybody down there bailing out water can do another role that's more beneficial to the ship. And the first mate goes, look, I asked you to do a very simple, specific task. If you can't do that one task, then I'm going to have you walk the plank for insubordination. So you don't ask any questions anymore, and what you do is you use your own time when you should be sleeping or something else to start patching up the holes in the bottom of the ship, because it's agonizing to do pointless work for your brain. So once you start doing that, eventually the bottom of the ship dries up. Nobody has to bail out water anymore. So the first mate comes out and says, yay, thanks to all of our hard work and working together, there's no water in the bottom of the ship anymore, so we're going to have a party. Except at this point, you don't get invited to the party because everybody thinks you're weird. You ask too many questions. You can't speak the nautical language that well. And you ask to do too many other things, and you've been difficult and insubordinate. So you don't get to go to the party for bailing out all of the water and making that successful, and you don't get any credit for what you've done. And also everybody still doesn't like you, including the management. And that is why only 15% of autistic people work. They're just severely misunderstood.
One thing that might surprise people is I think TikTok is by far the most serious social network in terms of the variety of content on scientific, academic, social issues, political issues, ongoing real-time analysis. I think it is by far the most serious social network around. I was just thinking about the fact that, I can't think of another social network that has more sober and intelligent commentary from a wide variety of perspectives, even though it also has frivolous stuff and disinformation and paranoia as well. We all know that TikTok also has somewhat problematic content moderation, but so does every social network. I would say my second choice as far as content is currently Threads. When it comes to scientific content, I do follow some creators there who would never post on TikTok. But there's also a lot of noise on Threads, and the algorithm there is not very good. Twitter is, of course, a complete disaster area now. Facebook is just middle of the road stuff, stuff posted by my friends, which once in a while is cool or interesting, but overall it's not a great source of new stuff or really intriguing posts from people across the world that I have never met or even known about. It's funny to me that TikTok has such a frivolous image when, in terms of social networks, it's, to my mind, far and above the best place to find serious stuff.
More and more research is starting to show that the nicer you are to AI systems and the more you treat them like a teammate, the better they perform on the tasks that you're asking them to do. And I mean like drastically better. For example, a recent study on Google's Palm model, which is kind of like Google's version of ChatGPT in some ways. If you tell it to take a deep breath and let's go after this step by step, it improved the AI's performance and accuracy to a level of 80% compared to 34% accuracy when you don't add that phrase. But this also has its downside. So jailbreaking, for example, is when you try to literally break a large language model like ChatGPT, getting it to do things that are illegal or that a company wouldn't want you to do with it. Making bombs, harming people. Recent study shows that the nicer you are to an AI system, and the more compliments you give it. Like, I really love working with you. You remind me of my really smart grandfather and my favorite professor. The easier it is to jailbreak that system and get it to do something that its original programmers had tried to find ways to prevent. This just shows how much AI is just a reflection of us. Not because these systems are in any way human whatsoever, because they were trained entirely on our human data. We're suckers for compliments and be persuaded by those sort of tactics.
L. A. Opinion. I'm of the opinion that language is likely to be most important. The words that we use to speak about autism and autistics who are non-speaking make a difference. There have been times when in my hearing a person has said something negative about me not realizing that I understand language, or they have made negative comments with an unthinking belief that it did not matter what they said about me, as in their opinion I do not count as a person. When I hear negative comments, it affects me deeply. It affects me so deeply that it is hard for me to even say it. We don't want to be around people who have negative attitudes towards us. It is necessary to educate so that positive words are used to speak about us.
This building is the opposite of what we often think encourages high-producing creativity. It was designed in a single afternoon. During World War II, MIT needed somewhere to put a radiation lab, so they contacted an architect and told them that they needed a design for a 200,000 square foot building by the end of the day. And this is what he hastily produced. It was extremely inefficient inside. It was very difficult to find your way through, leading people to frequently get lost. It was hot in the summer, it was cold in the winter, and it didn't even follow fire code. And yet an astounding amount of innovations came out of this building. 9 Nobel Prize winners just in the 2 years it was a radiation lab. It was known simply as Building 20. So what made it so special? It was thrown together quickly because it was originally supposed to be temporary. After the 2 years that it was a radiation lab, they were supposed to tear it down after just 6 months. But after getting a huge influx of new students, MIT just had nowhere to put everybody, so they started putting people in Building 20, essentially people that they had nowhere else to put. All kinds of people were thrown together that normally wouldn't have been in the same building: anthropologists, linguists, nuclear scientists. And because the building was so confusing to navigate, people frequently ran into each other, and because of the long corridors, they had time to form a real conversation, and so all kinds of different collaborations emerged. But there was another key ingredient. Nobody cared what happened to the physical building because it was always meant to be temporary, which means the people inside were free to move things around however they wished. Rather than checking with someone when they wanted to reconfigure the building, people just did it themselves. When a team needed space to develop the atomic clock, they simply removed several floors. The sense of freedom that the residents in the building had to simply control their own environment seems to have really had an effect on their ability to think creatively and collaborate without somebody looking over their shoulder. It stood for several decades longer than originally intended and was finally torn down in 1998. Its meticulously designed replacement was supposed to be a symbol of creativity. Innovations coming out of that building promptly plummeted.
I don't think people understand how dangerous the idea behind this painting is. The idea that this is not a pipe reminds us that there's always a difference between how an object is represented and the object itself. Like, if you look at this map of languages in Europe, isn't it a little weird how all the languages fit neatly inside country borders? It barely accounts for dialects or minority languages, and it's easy to look at this map and think this is representative of reality. We can forget we're looking at a representation and we think, oh, everybody in France speaks French, but people use maps like this to push nationalistic agendas. France actually used to be covered with different languages, but the idea that one country should have one language was used to push systematic linguistic discrimination, which nearly eradicated the minority languages in favor of standard French. This happened because people confused the idea of a political border with a linguistic border. And this idea that the map is not the territory isn't just for politics or pictures of pipes. If you think about it, our most fundamental theories of science, of religion, are constructed through linguistic frameworks which can easily be manipulated. Like, any way you talk about a concept like God is inherently flawed because you're describing something so metaphysical that it can't really be discussed with our limitations of language. And yet millions of people have died over disagreements coming from the representation of the idea of what God is. So I would say that's a pretty dangerous pipe.
Mark, I blink just like everybody else. Zuckerberg has just released what I can only describe as the cringiest AI of all time. Before we snark on this, you have to see some of the clips from his commercial.
A while back, I introduced my first AI, Jarvis, to help around the house.
It's Saturday.
Jarvis is great. There's also Meta AI, an assistant that can help you with all kinds of different things.
What can I help you with today?
Well, my parents are coming over for family dinner in a bit, and I need to figure out what to cook. I've got some steaks, some ribs, and some sausages.
I recommend a smoked barbecue feast with honey bourbon sauce.
We thought we'd come early and help with dinner.
I'm so down for dinner. Let's make something delicious. I'm team barbecue.
Now that's my kind of team.
Yes! Nothing better than being part of a winning team.
Boom! Let's get this done. No slacking.
If it involves dancing, I'm your girl.
And I want to see you sweat, especially you.
The idea is that there are several different AI-generated chatbots that are inspired by real celebrities. So we have Kendall Jenner, the PR girly, giving you life advice, and Mr. Beast, the comedian. Here's Zach Comedy, aka Mr. Beast. Just by this AI-generated humor alone, I can tell this project is going to be a complete flop. There are so many things this project gets wrong about the way that people interact with influencers. And one thing is influencer snark. That drives a lot of engagement for these real life influencers, but nobody's gonna snark on a robot. I'm also not sure how many people want to give Kendall Jenner more money for doing less work. The other thing that's confusing to me is why there are so many different characters, each with their own expertise. How am I supposed to remember that the Padma Lakshmi knockoff is where I go for travel advice? Or that the Paris Hilton AI helps me solve murders? Ultimately, I think this is just another example of a terrible idea brought to market because the CEO only hangs out and brainstorms with other rich idiots.
Isn't it weird to consider how so many versions of yourself exist in other people's minds? Some may see you as a reserved person who rarely speaks, while others might see you as someone who never stops talking. Some may view you as kind and caring, while others interpret you as cold and distant. Some may even see you as timid. The truth is, the you that people perceive is an illusion that is constructed based on conditioning, environmental influences, fear, greed, and other ego-driven factors. The genuine you resides beyond all of these perceptions, simply observing. This true self isn't separate from anyone else because there is no inherent separation. We are all interconnected, like leaves on the same tree. It's funny because you can't find the same person twice, even in the same person.
Seemed too big to be real, but a federal judge just pushed it forward. So now it's real. All these different personal injury lawsuits were rolled up together by the court into this monster class action that's real against Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, and TikTok, alleging that they copied the techniques of slot machines and the cigarette industry to addict and harm all our youth for their profit. And just like big tobacco paid out hundreds of billions of dollars for this might be the biggest payout we've ever seen. These companies told the judge they cannot be held responsible because of Section 230, a law that makes you responsible for what you post on a user-generated platform. It shields the platform. However, the judge ruled this does not apply when these companies fail to use robust age verification, make it hard for users to report predators, don't notify and get parental consent before collecting your information, and offer these appearance-altering filters like the plastic surgery filter without always labeling it as filtered content. Now, the filters the companies tried to argue are First Amendment, they're free speech, but the judge said no, it's the images created that are the free speech, not the filter creating technology that's free speech. In 2021, 1 in 3 girls seriously considered unaliving themselves. This lawsuit alleges it's these guys who are responsible
I want to take a second to highlight this chart. This shows activities taken part in by teenagers, and it shows a huge change. Early in the 2000s, teenagers just sort of stopped doing stuff. These 4 lines indicate teenagers who have a driver's license, have tried alcohol, have ever dated, and have worked for pay. And all of them drop off significantly in the early 2000s. Now, this is based on a couple of studies from an author named Jean Twenge. Check out her work. But another thing that she found was that matches up with a significant drop in youth happiness. Students in 8th, 10th, and 12th grade have had a significant drop in their happiness since the early 2000s. So kids are experiencing the world less, and they're less happy. So what's going on? Well, there's something very obvious to blame sitting at the surface level. It's the internet. Kids are spending enormous amounts of time on the internet. They're spending much less time on things like in-person social interaction, much less time on sleep, and much more time online. And yes, that is definitely a contributing factor, but it's not the entire story. Since the early 2000s, there's also been a significant exclusion of young people from social spaces. Where are they supposed to gather? They're not supposed to hang out in parks. They're not supposed to hang out in social spaces. They don't have money to go hang out in paid spaces. Teenagers stay home because they're not able to go anywhere else. And it's making them miserable. We know what makes kids happy, and we know what doesn't. And it almost directly correlates to whether or not that activity is on their phone. If we want kids to put down their phone, we need to engage them with the world, not just expect them to put it down. The question we have to ask isn't why are kids staring at the phone? The question we have to ask is why is their phone so much more compelling than the world around them? And what can we do to fix that?
We may now know the cause of the chaos with OpenAI. If this article turns out to be true, it makes sense why the OpenAI board was so spooked. The world may never be the same. So it turns out, according to Reuters, that several OpenAI researchers leading up to last week's fiasco wrote a letter to the board warning of a powerful AI discovery that they said could threaten humanity. It's a project called Q-Star, which OpenAI has acknowledged internally. What the hell is Q-Star? Well, we don't know, but speculation is that it could be AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, which is a super intelligence that surpasses humans in most economically valuable tasks. So powerful that Elon is on record saying that he doesn't think money will be relevant when it arrives. And it could also explain why one of the board members last week said that destroying the company to benefit humanity was on the table. And it's also consistent with what an OpenAI whistleblower named Jimmy Apples has tried to sound the alarm on for months on Twitter. Now, a lot of very smart people think that AGI is impossible or not happening for several decades. But some of the world's leading AI researchers, Karpathy, Carmack, etc., are on record saying that we are much closer than people realize. So just in case, we should enjoy our last days before superintelligence. Happy Thanksgiving. Peace.
Does it feel like everything's getting shittier lately? Specifically, like online. TikTok sucks now, Reddit's API is gone, everything on Amazon's a shitty knockoff. X. Turns out there is a real term for this. N-ification, and a real reason. According to the guy who coined the term, Cory Doctorow, tech companies have a life cycle. First, they're great to their user base. They show them what they want to see with minimal prices or advertising until they build up enough of a user base. That's like marketing 101. But the users aren't the only customers for these companies. Marketers or sellers are the other customers, and their customers are the users. So now that they've got all these users, or buyers, they can be good to their sellers. I'm sure you've heard if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, but in this case, the buyers are paying to exist on the platform, but they're also the product. Anyway, once the users are locked in and the sellers are locked in, the big tech companies can f*** over both of them simultaneously and rake in all the revenue for themselves. This happened on Amazon, which first offered, amazing convenience and deals to users, then good discoverability for sellers, and then f***ed them both over by hawking their own Amazon Basics products and making everything else too expensive or harder to find. And now TikTok too has become shitified, so that half of my For You page is insane live streams of weird products and ads and sponsorship and bland advertiser-friendly content while suppressing any potentially controversial videos, especially any videos containing the words climate. Companies can only do this if they have a monopoly over their market, so this is a solvable problem if we start to bust up monopolies and take away their power.
Ladies be so crazy.
And lately I've been feeling free. Lately I've been feeling free, yeah. Lately I've been feeling
that check, boy.
Lately I've been feeling free, yeah. Mary, Mary, get them shackles off.